Hello, finally. I'm hoping this is live and that you can hear me. Should be able to hear me, I think. Let's just make sure. Guys, welcome to another vlog of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. I'm your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty. I'm just scrolling through what some of the media houses have written about the essentially the clarifying of level 4 lockdown by the ministers who form part of this coronavirus command council. Now, it's been a very interesting development to sort of shout out to you, 6 Foot Scream. I see you, dog. It's been very interesting to sort of see firstly how bored Minister Yamini herself looked as she was delivering these rules and regulations. Shout out to Suburban Self-Sufficient. Hey dog, good evening to you too. I'm not really going to be long. I just want to give my initial thoughts on this because I've been very vocal on social media. And as I say that, just hang 10 as I see if I can share this link with other folk so that we can have more folks joining us. Sorry, you're probably hearing. Okay, sorry. Let me just quickly do this. Whilst I'm here, shout out to everybody who is joining us on this live stream. As I said, there's a lot to unpack very briefly. I've got good news, bad news, and ugly news. So before I get into any of that, as I said, let me just quickly share the link and ask people to join us in this discussion. Sorry, I will go a little for a moment. I'm a man. I can't multitask like the ladies do. All right, let's quickly do this. So join me in discussion and initial reaction to the level 4 restrictions. All right, that should do. That should do on YouTube. I'm actually glad I can do these. Shout out to you, IC3ZA. Good evening to you. Sorry, 6 Foot. Let me see what you're saying. Too many people got their heads stuck in the sand. I feel all of SA is blind. Dude, I agree with you. I agree with you. I really do. And hit the like button, guys. Thank you so much, IC3. Shout out to everybody who is liking and sharing the show. I just want to quickly get this out. Sorry, I should have done this before I went on, but maybe as I try and do this and talk at the same time, lol, let me just make sure of two things. Can you guys hear me clearly? And can you see me clearly? So as I wait for those responses, let me just quickly put this out. On Bernard, shout out to you, homie. Good evening. And thank you, 6 Foot. And Pyro, hey man. Fyro, excuse me. How are you, homie? Good to see you on the live stream. So maybe as a quick recap, what I really want to have a chat about is just the initial response to the level 4 restrictions. I've been warning you guys since the beginning of the lockdown that this is going to be, Paddy, shout out to you, homie, hello. I've been warning you since the beginning of this lockdown that one of two things is going to happen here. Either A, the government is going to use all the goodwill and it's going to literally embark on a process that is based in science, rooted in good practice, and it's going to be transparent, right? That was the one option that we literally had. And again, I said this back then, before the evidence came out, right, around what good practice even looks like, right? So a part of me was like, okay, cool. If government needs to buy itself a little bit of time to get its system and its act in order, given that we don't know then, at least, we didn't know too much about the coronavirus, sure, I get it, right? A temporary lockdown of some sort just to get things up and running seemed reasonable. But the problem is Problem is, and invariably in these situations, the data is beginning to come out and it's shattering the myth that we somehow need a draconian, not that we did even at the beginning, but like the data now is becoming absolutely crystal clear that you actually do not need this sort of draconian or just even period a lockdown. Now I know as I say this, there's the usual crowd of, oh, how can you say that? You know, of course we need a lockdown. Look, it's saving lives and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, you've got to understand something. There are other countries that have, firstly, far more experience in dealing with pandemics like these. You know, South Korea, Taiwan comes to mind. You know, countries that went through similar pandemics in the past, MERS, SARS, swine flu. We all forgot about swine flu. And we didn't do this back then. But what those countries did is they established systems. Again, the idea of a good democracy having strong institutions, not strong politicians, strong institutions. So they got their institutions geared to be able to respond to this sort of thing. What do? We sat on our hands. The usual happened basically. The usual 26 years basically of politicians, you know, mostly leftist politicians who loot, who steal, who maladministrate, and who ran our health system into the ground. So even on that basis, I said, okay, cool. Even if it's that bad, the administration at least, I do understand the need that it should buy itself some sort of time to get its act in order. But we're now beginning to see that the time they're buying themselves for maybe isn't necessarily related to COVID-19 and more to do with their ideology, pushing a leftist ideology onto society. So before I get into that, remember guys, as I quickly finish typing this out, you can support the work that I do as Big Daddy Liberty by becoming a friend of the IRR. This is how I make my shekels. You do that, of course, by signing up and becoming a regular donator to the IRR. It's as simple as sending an SMS to 32823, terms and conditions to apply. An SMS will cost you R1, and you can donate 90 Rand a month towards the work that I and my colleagues do. So make sure you go through and do that. If you can't SMS, I know some of you are saying, oh, you're overseas and you know it's impractical to do that, then hey guys, feel free to throw some shekels to the campaign, via our online registration, which is, I've now forgotten it, I'm really sorry about that, irr.org.za/join, and you can sign up a monthly debit order of 90 Rand there. So let's see here, let me finish this, and then we're going to get into this conversation, that kombucha came back. We're going to get into the conversation around just the sheer stupidity of what we're seeing and the danger. So the stupidity is one thing, the danger is the other. We're seeing a coalescing of state power into the hands of politicians who for a very long time have wanted to do this, but haven't had an adequate reason to do it. That's the first thing we're going to have a conversation about. The second thing, in terms of my initial reaction, is are you recognizing the Cold War that's happening right now between those two camps that fought it out at the ANC Congress? Those two camps, if I can quickly remind you, were the Cyril Ramaphosa camp, the CR17s, as they were codenamed back then, if you remember that. And of course, the NDZ, the Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma camp, that literally was in the pocket of Jacob Zuma. Those two camps haven't gone away. Shout out to you, Joe Emilio. Hey, homie, welcome to the show. Those two camps haven't gone away, and the thing about the ANC, it has this weird insistence on pretending that that it's unified. You know, they speak a lot about unity, but it's all nonsense. What it really is placating the other group that loses. So when Cyril won, and it was a Pyrrhic victory, really. Hey, Fred, thanks, man. And hi, Mary, I see you. What I'm saying is, just a quick thing before I get into that. Are a lot of you awake because this lockdown has knocked your sleeping patterns out of sync? I know mine are. I'm finding myself sleeping at very, very, very late hours now. I'm sure I should quickly joke about that. But just to come back to what I was saying, I'm going to have a conversation with you guys so that you see that there is a cold war happening in government right now. A cold war which the media, the mainstream media, aren't picking up because they're not really interested in those sort of questions. What we've seen really, what we've seen really is the media almost playing the role of being the lapdog of government, they seem to be trying to find any reason to support Cyril. Like, come on, we've got to back this guy. We've got to keep to the talking points of government. And very few of them have essentially been asking real tough questions around how these politicians have been exercising state power during this period. And that is a serious indictment on a media which always claims and venerates a lot. Oh, we're an independent media, and no fear, no favor. Some of the slogans we hear from them. But even as I listen to the media asking questions in this press conference to the ministers who are overseeing level 4 lockdown, like, the questions were fluffy bullshit. Excuse my language. It is fluffy nonsense. Like, oh, will we be able to travel on this certain day? What does this mean? Do I need to apply for a permit? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares when, and hear me out, who cares when the broader issue is a gaggle of politicians who are exercising power unchecked? Where is Parliament, for example? Not that Parliament is particularly useful, but where is the idea that the people that you voted for as public representatives should be able to ask these politicians in the executive hard questions that keep them in check? Again, as I said, not that Parliament does this properly anyway, but you would expect some level of checks and balances, and there is none at the moment. What you have are a small elite, a chosen few, if you will, who sit in this coronavirus command committee. Sorry, I forgot the full damn thing, the name, and they almost exercise power arbitrarily. Like, again, coming back to my idea that there is a cold war in the cabinet, the president took to the screens 2 or 3 days ago, I forget when, and he said, "Hey guys, we're moving to level 4." And level 4 means a few less restrictions, but really the lockdown persists, right? And he threw out a carrot, if I can call it that. Look, I don't smoke, but it was a carrot nonetheless to those who do smoke. And he said, you know what? Under level 4, we're going to allow the sale of tobacco and cigarettes and tobacco products. And genuinely speaking, and I think out of good faith, I think he meant it, right? Because he recognized, look, it's a bit silly to withhold the sale of the stuff. But what he didn't do in that moment, and this is a sleight of hand, is he said nothing about alcohol. He sort of left it to your devices to guess as to whether the sale of alcohol would happen. But, because of the announcement he made about cigarettes, people were hopeful. They're like, yeah, okay, cool. Maybe that's going to come when the ministers then explain. Tonight, the ministers had an opportunity to then add flesh to the bones that Cyril threw you. And the tone was very different, wasn't it? Suddenly you had his arch rival from the days of their contestation in the ANC elective conference, i.e. one Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, then take to the screen and essentially act as the real de facto president, because the power rests in her hands to a large extent as the Minister of COGTA. And she walked back everything the president said, actually openly contradicted him. Oh, I know he said cigarettes are going to go on sale, but screw that. I'm saying no. And I'm saying no on the basis of 2,000 submissions. Not that 2,000 submissions of people were saying things like, oh, if you allow cigarettes, then people are going to share cigarettes. That's going to spread the virus. Oh, hey, if someone has a lickety spliff, the fact that they're licking the spliff means that they want to share the virus. That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. You mean to tell me if you don't give people the information about how the virus is spread, namely, that it can spread by close contact and obviously saliva and blah, blah, blah. You mean to tell me that even if you gave them that information, they'll still do that stuff? Of course not. Of course not. And again, the data is absolutely crystal clear. Funny enough, the data itself even comes from government. They literally put out recently a study by the Human Sciences Research Council, which basically looked at a whole bunch of areas around the lockdown compliance to it being one, and they found that 99% of people happily complied with the lockdown. And do you know why that was the case in terms of how I see it? Because we literally, to an extent, initially at least, we took people into confidence and we gave them information about the lockdown. We didn't lie to them. We didn't, purely based on the information we had back then at the beginning of this thing. It's quite fair to say the government was actually quite open in saying, look, we don't really know how to deal with this thing. Other countries in the world are locking down, and that's being used as a means to buy time. So let's also do that because we don't want to overwhelm the public health system. And fair enough, based on the information we had back then, that was a reasonable thing to do. But now the problem is, they then also exploited that situation to go on this moral crusade. A moral crusade, by the way, which the ANC has always had. Of being opposed to people drinking, being opposed to people smoking, being opposed to people taking drugs, basically being opposed to people doing what they want to do with their bodies. Whether you and I disagree with it is irrelevant. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take drugs. But I'm in no position to apply my moral standards over the next person who decides to do that. On what basis is that freedom? That's not freedom. That's not freedom. Shout out to you, Jesse. I see you, girl. Welcome. Guy, sorry. Welcome, dude. That's not freedom. I mean, you have a situation where the ANC wants to control all aspects of society, and it goes back to their very ideology. I've been speaking to you guys a lot about the ideology. That the ANC, when I call them socialists and commies, I'm not saying it for shits and giggles. That's literally who they say they are. And you need to start getting into the habit of believing politicians when they say they are something. You've got to start getting into the habits of that so that you don't get surprised when they start doing asinine crap like this that they're doing right now. So let me hold that thought and let me get this out. Shout out to everybody joining, by the way. I'm seeing you guys. Welcome. We're going to have a late night chat by the fireside. Not that I have a fireside in this poor little flatlet, but excuse me. We're going to have a late night chat with your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty. Just giving initial reaction to what we saw tonight. And the bottom line is this. You saw tonight a gaggle of ministers who are power hungry and literally have seized the moment to be able to say, finally, we can control these people. And we'll do it, unfortunately, in the based on everything that happens in this country on race. So the first people they target, of course, is quote unquote white monopoly capital or white South Africans. That's the first people they target. And then increasingly, because they're commies, they're actual socialists, they target your more well-off people to say, you know what, let's actually establish a precedent with these people that you are not in control, even though you're the economic engine of the economy. What they want to do is establish power in the hands of the political elites in this country so that you, those who are economically empowered and economically well off, feel like you are dependent on them. That's essentially what they want. Because they've already checkmated us when it comes to poor South Africans. Poor South Africans have been made dependents of the state. They've won that game. That game is literally checkmate, you're done. The real challenge, sorry, I wanted to swear, but I was like, no, hold that one back. The real challenge has been the middle class in South Africa, the business community, the entrepreneurs, those people who basically say, hey, we don't really need the government. As long as they get out of our way, we'll create the economic opportunities, we'll create the jobs and blah, blah, blah. It's those people who they now want to break the back of. And you can only do that if you have a good crisis like this one. Oh man, never underestimate the value of a good crisis in political circles, because it allows you to basically push in insidiously, but it allows you to push in regulations that ordinarily people would be very awake and attuned to, and they would see instantly. So I think that's what we're seeing here. I think that's what we saw tonight. We saw them essentially say, yeah, level 4, but level 4 is basically level 5 with a bit of a strawberry flavor to it, as I saw the meme come out today. Yeah, you're not slick with the memes, man. But that's essentially what they did. And you will notice that there's always, they play good cop, bad cop. To a large extent. They play good cop, bad cop. Cyril is meant to be the good cop. He's the one that placates you, that stops you from barking and baring your fangs. Because I've always argued that politicians fall back when you actually begin to fight back and you bear your fangs at them. But Cyril's a good cop. He's the one that prevents you from saying, hey, what the fuck is this? You know, he stops that little, hey, what the fuck is this moment? Because a lot of you go, oh, Cyril, isn't he fantastic, guys? Cyril, oh my gosh, he's fantastic. That was my best impression of the he speaks so well types. And on the other hand, you have, and a lot of you took offense when I said this on social media. I said there's two groups, mostly from the middle class, that piss me off when it comes to Cyril. You have this group who I call the Blavity Blacks. The Blavity Blacks, Blavity is a magazine in America that pushes this woke social justice warrior nonsense through the lens of blackness, right? So Blavity Blacks. You have two groups, as I said. You have these Blavity Blacks with their woke identitarian nonsense who pushes the social justice warrior leftism through the lens of blackness. And then you have the other group, right? Also middle class. It's these, I like to call them these SJW, or the social justice warrior, he speaks so well type whites. Who literally say, oh no, we need to trust Cyril because, you know, he's not like the rest of them. He's the good ANC. There's the good ANC and the bad ANC. And I'm like, what? Are you serious right now? Yeah. You know, he's the good ANC. Look at how he's like pushing back against all the bad stuff. And I'm like, hey man, Azila Bafok, this is the same guy who's literally pushing expropriation without compensation, the same guy who's pushing the national health insurance crap on you, the same guy who under his ANC, they're pushing, an asinine policy like, it's at the tip of my tongue, where they confiscate your pensions. It's the same damn guy. How is he good for the country? How is he the good ANC? Is there such a thing as the good ANC? But consistently, you have these two groups, both of them in the middle class, the Blavity Blacks. Hello, am I back? I don't know if I'm back yet. Let's see here. I'm just going to log on so I can kind of see myself. And am I back, guys? Oh yeah, I think I'm back. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Sebastian and Red and Fred. Thanks, guys. Yeah, look, maybe I'm not going to waffle on, but I just wanted to have this conversation with you, just to sort of gauge what your reaction is, and for you to get a sense of what my reaction is, because there are serious political ramifications for what you saw tonight. There are very serious political ramifications. It isn't, excuse me, I just heard at the moment I said it, ramifications, okay, never mind. Sorry, I thought it would be funnier than that. But yeah, I mean, there are very serious ramifications for what we saw tonight. I repeated it, I heard it the moment I said it. And none of them, or very few of them, are actually good for you. And very few of them are beneficial for the nation. And my biggest fear, maybe as I begin to conclude, because I want to get into the conversation of what I'm going to do, because it's gone beyond a let's just sit and chat about it and be outraged on social media thing. It's gone beyond that. It's seriously gone beyond that. It's now at a point where, okay, Big Daddy, what are you going to do about it, right? And it's not even just a Big Daddy, what are you going to do about it? What are we, the South Africans who actually are the ones who are in the fight, the battle of ideas, as I like to call it, what are we going to do about it? Because surely, my dear South African, surely my fellow South African, as you sit and watch your favorite fat boy pontificate into this mic, you're probably thinking, Yara, it's the end of the month, these debits are going off. I literally am surviving by the skin of my teeth. Or maybe some of these debits bounced, right? Guys are hurting out here, man. I literally, a lot of you think that this is just what I do, right? This is the only thing I do. I'm just, on social media. No, guys, I have businesses that I draw income from. And I can tell you now, it has been 34 days of absolute pain because there's no cash flow. And when there's no cash flow in the business, you have no options as an entrepreneur. You can't do anything. I have 4 guys, 4 of my taxi drivers, who are sitting at home, unable to provide for their families right now. And I think this is the story of South Africa right now. And they would have been the sort of people who tuned to this coronavirus command team, whatever they're called, hoping against hope that these guys are finally going to get it. That we're not all ministers. We're not going to make our nice 160,000 Rand salary at the end of each month, if that is what it is. I'm sort of assuming based on a rough calculation. We don't all make that kind of money. And it's those guys who would have been bitterly disappointed tonight because they looked at this and they thought, yo, these people don't get it, eh? They don't get it that I have, and I won't name anybody, but one of the people I know really well sent me a message today, a good friend of mine, and said, brother, I have 230 Rand between me and poverty. 230 Rand that should be able to provide for me, my wife, and my daughter. 230 Rand, guys, at the end of the month. And he got no salary because his business wasn't working. What do you tell that guy when he's just finished watching these ministers talk nonsense and not really understand the plight of ordinary South Africans? What do you tell that guy? Obviously, he's my boy. I lent him some cash. And those of you who pay attention to what I often tweet about, I talk a lot about the Outlaws. It's this group of guys who, we grew up together in Emlazi, where I'm from, and we'd hang out in the street corner. But that street corner was our university, man. We were a group of about, maybe all in all, 10, 11, 12 of us, young black men, all from different backgrounds, some poorer than others. Some of my fellow outlaws came from informal settlements in my area, but would always get together at the street corner every afternoon to talk everything from politics to economics to you name it. And a lot of the ideas that I hold today are shaped by some of the conversations that happened on that street corner. Guys who understood the value of a private free market because that's where they derived a lot of their income from. They didn't get their money from government. In fact, our experience of government was one of repression. Cops are the same people who were, busting our balls and, making us lie on the ground and all that shit because they suspected us of something. Just 6, 7 black guys chilling on the corner because that's what, township life was about. But we understood the state is not your friend. We understood that politicians are liars. We understood that, politicians have their friends, and those friends are the tenderpreneurs, the inner political circles, and that we were not part of that. And that because we're not part of that, and because we don't benefit from the same government, that we had a responsibility, all 12 young black dudes, we had a responsibility to fend for ourselves. And you fend for yourself by hustling. That's the one street mantra that I learned on the streets, that you hustle. Either you get your education up or you find some form of work, man. You do what you need to do to get some rands in your pockets. And we understood that. And our politics, as I said, was 100% wholly guided by that. And, when one of those homies then gives me a call, because we made a pledge to each other that, the older we become, as we become fathers and, responsible husbands and whatever the case may be, that would look out for each other, would watch out for each other. And I'm thinking about those guys right now. I'm thinking about those sort of South Africans, guys who don't have as much as maybe you and I have. And when I then look at those politicians on that little command council nonsense that we watched tonight, describing what level 4 lockdown will look like, my immediate thought went to those guys. And my immediate thought went to the millions of other South Africans who just don't have the sort of options that we have as South Africans, as middle-class South Africans, people who are on the margins, and people who now, because of this lockdown, will find themselves becoming the sort of dependents, state dependents, that they never thought they were going to be. Why? Because they thought they were doing the right thing, working hard, building savings, looking out for their families. So that's the reality I talk about. That's what's occupying my initial thoughts, my initial reaction post this announcement by this gaggle of these ministers. To a large extent, I couldn't give a damn about wealthier South Africans, middle-class South Africans, because we're fine. Really, if we take a moment, we really are fine to think about it. It's the poor South Africans who I'm deeply worried about. And the worry isn't just like worry of like, oh, what are they going to do? But the worry is, how are they going to respond? Because to a large extent, I don't think poor South Africans have responded. We haven't seen poor South Africans really roar. And when they roar, generally speaking, no amount of soldiers on the street, no amount of police are going to stop that. And it's partially why I think Cyril, in all his wisdom, has deployed an extra 73,000 soldiers on the streets. I think he got briefings from his top brass, the intelligence types people saying, listen, die pauper soldans, literally. And you can't stop hungry people. And this is the tragedy of what the lockdown does. It makes criminals out of people who ordinarily are actually hardworking, everyday South Africans, poor as they may be, but they are hardworking, everyday South Africans. So I'm gonna end it there with my final thought. And again, before I end it, like I am seeing your comments, guys, and keep them coming through. And if there are any questions, let's have a quick chat about it. But my biggest takeaway from tonight is just the gap between the political elites and ordinary South Africans is so wide. It's so wide. And the irony is so obvious that it can only take an academic or a journalist or even a politician to not see it. Only those three groups of people, dumb as they are not going to see just how much of a gap there is between what the politicians are trying to do versus what people just want to be able to get on with. And that's my big concern about level 4 lockdown. No one understands that depriving people of their ability to make an income. I see a question here, Paddy. Have they really deployed these troops? Has anybody seen them? That's a good question. I think that's the other thing. That's a great irony, right? Is that by and large, if you're in the suburbia and middle class, you're not the one who's seeing the soldiers and the real threat of these brown shirts on the street. I think it's mostly poorer South Africans, guys who live in informal settlements, guys who live in townships who are seeing the specter of everyday brown shirts on their streets. I think it's them who are literally like, oh my goodness, there are more of these people. Because all of the reports you've read when it comes to the abuse of South Africans at the hand of security forces have mostly been poor black individuals. The people who are being shot up, the people who are doing frog marches, rolling around on the ground, having their groceries spilled on the floor and all that nonsense. Dog, I think it's mostly poor people who are saying, hey man, I see more of this. And I see you, Menki, saying it's mostly staff, admin staff. That may be partially true, but I can tell you now, head over to any South African township and ask them if there's more of a securocrat presence on the streets, and they'll say yes. We are seeing it. We're seeing it. And that's actually the takeaway that I wanted to get to. And today's episode is actually going to be that, but maybe I'll do it tomorrow. And I'll leave you with this question too, while I'm at it. Whose lockdown is it anyway? Whose lockdown is this anyway? Is it what it should be, a public health-driven response? The idea that, yes, you need a solid public health response, massive and aggressive testing and tracing, and an emphasis on social distancing. And by the way, there's a very big difference between social distancing and quarantining people. One is an act of force. Quarantining is saying to people, you must stay indoors because I'm going to have soldiers or police or whatever to arrest you or fine you if you don't do that. Social distancing is different. That's you saying to responsible adults, look, here's all the information that we understand. It's airborne. It needs you guys just to space out in public spaces, like we're doing to a large extent. And we'll let you, the individuals, you in business, you, the citizen, to police yourselves because it's based on self-interest. You don't want to get the virus, right? Then sure, then follow these certain rules based on good practices and you'll be by and large fine. Because what the data is beginning to show us is that COVID is, it's not the flu, as a lot of people say, but like the flu, a lot of people are going to get it. And for a lot of people, it's going to be asymptomatic or at the very least, very mild symptoms. Some people not even knowing that they've even had it. As a lot of these studies are now beginning to show that, when they did tests on people like who has the antibodies that respond to this virus, a lot of people, large segments of society, are showing that they have had this disease. But many of them are like, oh, really? I didn't even have the symptoms. Question here from Joe. How long do you think? Sorry, Joe, I missed the question. I'm going to find it here. It should be on this side. How long do you think it will be before we get back to normal, in inverted commas, in your opinion? I don't think we're going to get back to normal. And I said this when this thing began. I said, you've got to understand something about they should do something. What I feel like this is about to freeze. Okay. Yes, no? Okay. I think I'm still with you. Oh, okay, we lost him again. Hopefully it'll come back. It should be back. Am I back? Yes, I think I'm back. Once a politician establishes a precedent, in this case, that I can lock down a society, I can put soldiers on the street, I can beat up and humiliate those who hold very little in the way of power in society, that I can control industry. I can tell you, the economically illiterate politician, can tell you which industry can and can't operate. Once they establish that precedent, or let me add one more, that I can surveil people's devices and literally introduce de facto spyware into people's devices. Once they establish that sort of precedent, under the guise of there being a crisis or a pandemic, trust me, that power never disappears. That power never disappears. And if you think about it, it doesn't disappear because it's exactly what they want. It's exactly what they want, if you think about it. They've been saying for a very long time, given their doctrine of the National Democratic Revolution, that this is what they've always wanted to do, to control society, to have as much power over you as possible. And in reality, that's exactly what they're enjoying about this moment. It's given them a cover, if you will. COVID has given them a cover to be able to actually institute the very sort of mantra, the very sort of doctrine that guides their everyday actions. So don't be surprised when you see this level of draconian restrictions. Guys, even the United Damn Nations, people who I don't necessarily hold any sway for, have said this lockdown in South Africa is pretty scary stuff. That's pretty scary stuff. Even they have called it out as being unnecessarily violent, as being unnecessarily draconian. And Joe again is asking, but what are the DARR and AfriForum doing? Wouldn't they fight? Dudes, it's not about these organizations only. And I say this as someone who's with the IRR. I'm very friendly with AfriForum. It's not about these organizations. It's about you, the citizen. What do we do together? Now, on that, on social media, if you follow me on Twitter, I've been talking about putting my skin in the game, more skin in the game, so to speak. And I'm putting up 500 Rand of my own money towards any legal eagles out there who are going to be taking on these draconian and rather arbitrary regulations, whether they're under level 4 or level 5 or whatever. The levels to me are irrelevant, but essentially someone who's going to say, firstly, does this err on the side of recognizing people's human rights and our freedoms, number one? Number two, does this recognize the fact that we are a constitutional democracy? Number three, are we ceding power to a tiny political elite and basically normalizing it the longer that it goes? So I have 500 Rand that I'm putting up of my own money. And a lot of you, in response to this, have said, hey man, I'll match your 500 Rand. Some have said, I'll throw in 1,000 Rand, I'll throw in 5 grand, one of you. And that's all fine and well. So what I'm doing now is I've got some lawyers who are inboxing me. I've got some people who are saying, hey man, we're willing to do this. Some of my friends in this circle are saying, look, hey, we've been working on this in the background for a while. So I'll keep you guys updated. I think there's a lot of stuff that I need to sift through. There's a lot of people I need to get together for us to literally take this on, not only at a legal basis, because I think that's an important place to fight this, but also at the basis of ideas. Because I think government is getting a lot of pushback even people that they thought would have their backs on this. Um, they're getting a lot of pushback, and it's now becoming an issue of how do we get the message out to them, how do we get the truth out to them, and how do we get them to see that by and large their favorite politicians, whatever they may be, whether it's EFF, ANC or DA, that none of these people should be trusted, and really power should return back into the hands of you, the citizen. So I am working on something. There are people who I am in communication with now, and I've got some WhatsApps and stuff pinging away as I speak. And I will make an announcement because this one doesn't end here. And I can say this with confidence, guys, I've got your back. And I need to know that you have got mine, and that when this finally gets going, that we as South Africans are going to stand together and actually fight. Take the fight to the politicians. Because I think up till now, they've had an easy road, basically, of bullshitting us, of talking crap, and of basically trying to put in place measures that have very little to do with necessarily fighting COVID, but more with establishing an almost de facto police state. Although I don't think we're there yet. But they're trying to sort of soften South Africans towards saying, when this does happen, you would have accepted it because we've set the precedent. So I'm putting together a yes, guys, team. I see the skeptics in you like, what is this? But yeah, there are people who are reaching out to me and saying, we're thinking of doing this, put it together, and we've got you. So I'm working on it. There are guys who I'm talking to. You're going to hear very soon what those details are. I'm also kind of trying to catch up to it. But I'm not going to sit back and allow these trendy lefty commies to destroy my country. This is my damn country. It's your country. It's our damn country. It doesn't belong to politicians, and it doesn't belong to those damn commies either. And I think we need to get that message out to them in no uncertain terms that by hell, if it means going down, I'm going to go down with a fight. And this is not empty talk. This is not just rhetoric. I'm not just a social media person. The work that I do is literally out on the street. So you're going to see me out in communities. I'm going to bring you more of that sort of content as I speak to people about, hey, should you really be trusting these individuals? Surely there is a better society for you. That is going to be ramped up quite a lot. And there's already stuff brewing in the background, which I'll bring to you, especially once the lockdown is kind of over. But in the here and now, there is background work happening around taking this on legally. And there's people I just need to bring in who've basically indicated to me in emails that, look, we were kind of working on something. Let's coalesce, or rather, let's bring the effort together and let's not work in silos. So the fight is on, guys. It's definitely on. I'm going to be speaking to my colleagues at the Institute of Race Relations. We're going to be bringing, hopefully, something to the fore, whether it's a campaign or something, but we need to start getting people, we need to start red-pilling people, if I can just put it in simple terms. We need to start red-pilling people seriously on this issue. I'm going to reach out to the guys at AfriForum, see what they're up to. I know they brought legal action against the state in terms of trying to establish whether this is a police state or not, and I think that's good. That's good action to take. But I do think we need to coordinate. And by the way, it isn't just those who are, in the IRR, in AfriForum and blah blah blah. Like even other organizations, even ones which maybe ordinarily I wouldn't agree with. Let's get those guys involved in the fight. Let's stop this thing of working in silos. Worse yet, let's stop this thing of saying, oh, there's some white organizations and some black organizations. No, dudes, like these are all our rights. When we fight like this, we're fighting for all our families. So for a change, let's see if we can all work together and actually face the real enemy, which is a political elite in this country, which is trying to put in place things that should not be in place, period. So let me end it there. Those were my sort of initial thoughts on this. Excuse me, as I think I'm coming down with my usual sinus, or maybe it's COVID, who knows? But I'll get it checked out probably tomorrow. But I do suffer from sinus. So that's the other thing I want to quickly say. Guys, if you look at all the risk factors, I'm literally in the danger zone when it comes to COVID, but I'm not going to let that then cloud my decision making around how we should be treating society and other people who aren't at as risk as me. So I'm the sort of person who should be taking greater care. You know, I had all the risk factors. I'm obese, morbidly obese. I've got a bad chest because I suffer from sinusitis. You know, I'm probably pre-diabetic. I know I'm not diabetic because I do test. I haven't tested in a while. And I'm hypertensive, right? So you'd expect someone like me to be like, oh, no, we need this lockdown, we need this lockdown. But I'm not going to do that because principles matter. Principles matter, values matter. Even in moments where something could potentially affect you personally, it doesn't mean then that somehow you throw all your values out the window because you're living in fear of what something happens, about whether something happens, to you. No. Like you stand behind actual principles that matter. And the principles are, this is a free society, damn it. Or at the very least, it should be a free society. And those freedoms mean putting the responsibility into the hands of citizens, individuals, families, the people that matter, not depriving them of their civil liberties and not depriving them of the means to providing for themselves in an economy. So, you know, I've got skin in the game here. Like, seriously, guys. I'm literally the prime target number one for COVID, but it doesn't mean I then suddenly lose my principles because I'm fearful. You cannot operate in a free society based on fear. You cannot operate, let me repeat that. You cannot operate in a free society or make decisions in a free society based on fear. You've got to hold on to principles, you've got to hold on to actual science and data, and you fight for the freedoms of other people. And you allow people, individuals, families, to be the ones that make decisions. I, as an individual, because I know I'm at high risk, I will take precautions that look after my life. But I'm not going to infringe on the freedoms of other people, especially those who are less fortunate from me, from being able to do the same and having the means to do the same. I'm not going to create a society of people who are dependent on the state, dependent on those very same crooked politicians. I'm not going to leave those people to be dependent of those crooked politicians. That would be morally wrong from my perspective. So that's what the fight is all about. It's not me fighting the idea that we need to respond to COVID. That's not what I'm fighting. Of course, we need to respond to COVID, but I think we need to do so in a rational way, which allows and empowers individuals to be the ones who make decisions. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If you don't want to understand that and you still want to continue saying, oh, you know, he just wants people to get sick and blah, 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 then, dude, that's, as we say in Zulu, karwa koloyo. That's your curry to stew up. Mine is to say that in a free society, you cannot make decisions based on fear and you cannot drive people into becoming irrational because they're fearful of something. You need to respect and treat people like adults and believe, as your own data is saying, dear government, that people will make the right decisions if they're driven by self-interest and the interest of preserving their families. I mean, your own studies show that 99% of South Africans adhere to this lockdown because you gave them the rationale for it. And now I'm saying to you, you need to move to the next step, which is to say, if 99% of you are willing to do the right thing, then as the state, it should be saying, look, we'll support you by providing masks, for example, by providing good information, like keeping social distance and blah, blah, blah. That's what you need to do. You treat people like adults. And worse, better yet, rather not worse, but better yet, you allow those people to get on with the business of being individuals that look after families. You don't deprive people of that basic human instinct, which is to look after self and family. That's a simple argument. And that's my initial reaction to what we saw tonight. Never trust a commie, number one, and politicians are straight up trash. And you saw that in tonight's briefing. And I think it'll take us ordinary South Africans taking them on in a meaningful way. And I'm working on that. I am working with people, lawyers and the likes, and people who are just saying, look, we've got a bit of cash, we'll support this. So there is work being done. Don't think that nothing's happening. This is just all words. There's work happening, and I think there'll be an announcement on this very, very soon. Very soon. So your favorite fat boy is working on it. I've got some guys who are saying, look, let's take this on and let's actually begin to free South Africans to be the sort of free society that we should be, and at the same time fight this damn disease, because we must fight this disease. And on that basis, let me say goodnight, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, I have set up my Patreon. I think you just search Big Daddy Liberty and you'll find, because a lot of you are saying you can't do the whole SMS thing and friends with the IR, and that's fine. Just find me on Patreon, guys. Throw $1 a month or $5 a month. That's all it takes to support your favorite fat boy. And yeah, I think you can also drop, actually, I don't know. So let me just leave it at Patreon or join us on the Friends of the IRR. Guys, find me on all your social media. Just search Big Daddy Liberty or the Big Daddy Liberty Show. And remember, as I always say, never trust a commie.